We've come back from the coast in the last week, enjoying looking out to sea over the North Wales coast. And the sea, that vast expanse of water with the sky above, is a really exhilarating experience, I think many of us find, and gives us a real sense of space and with it of freedom. As we look out over the water, there's nothing really to interrupt our view. Our eye can linger wheresoever we would wish, and the limit is only the horizon before us, distant as it is, and even then we almost half feel we can venture our gaze almost beyond and imagine what lies beyond our sight. So a great sense of space and a great sense of freedom that comes from the open vision before us. And yet there's a catch. When we look out to sea, often actually what catches our eye and delights us are the little incidents, the things that we can spot that make that vista before us come alive. It may be the distant headland that we can spot, and we wonder perhaps if we've been there ourselves, if we can recognise it. The lighthouse that beckons across the water, the boat that we see slipping over the horizon, the birds playing in the foreground, diving into the water. It's these things that bring the scene to life, that are the things that the eye tends to linger upon. And by contrast, the barren expanse of water, sheer emptiness, doesn't so much delight us, but terrify us. When we look out and we can see nothing but water, we are, as we say, all at sea. That brings not a sense of freedom, but a sheer sense of terror. So navigating our way through life, finding our freedom, involves, yes, a sense of space, a sense of there being an open road that we can choose to walk out and find our way upon. We need a sense of space, but we also need points of recognition, points that we can relate to. This week, the Minster Church of St. Peter celebrates its patronal festival. St. Peter ad Vincula, St. Peter in Chains, is the name of the historic church in Rome that we take our name from, and which commemorates at this time in early August the supposedly anyway the discovery of the chains by which Peter was bound in prison. And the story that is told in the book of Acts of Peter's release from captivity, dramatic as it is, comes in two halves. Peter is released from his chains by the angel and delivered from the darkness of the dungeon. But then he's not left simply standing outside the prison gates. The story ends with his coming to find the Christians who've been praying for his release and coming back into fellowship with them. We could say, therefore, that freedom, as we experience it, involves not only a sense of space, of freedom of choice, of the open road which we find ourselves on, it also involves a sense of there being real relationships of which we're a part. In order to choose at all, there have got to be things to choose, or people to choose to be with. And freedom, as we configure it, as we understand it, involves maybe both of these aspects. Politicians on left and right may emphasise different aspects of our freedom, the freedom of liberty to choose, and the freedom of relationship to find and belong. But most politicians, whether of left or of right, will nevertheless recognise that there is a balancing act here which we play. Within this time of coronavirus, we've all experienced a diminished sense of our freedom. We've often been confined, if not locked up, locked down, and unable, therefore, to relate as we would have wished. And the latest episode in this ongoing saga for us is now the question of the wearing of face masks, where in recent weeks we've become much more accustomed to remembering to carry with us a face mask and to wear them if we're visiting the shops. A change that we've all now come to face, and now which we understand is going to be mandatory in places of worship from next week. The wearing of face masks, of course, we sense as confinement. It does encroach on our sense of space. We're very conscious when we're wearing the mask of perhaps how uncomfortable it can be. So too it affects our relationships. I don't know about you, but I've certainly been trying to discern people's expressions and feelings from their eyes, not so much from what I can see more normally of mouth and face. So yes, masks have encroached on our sense of freedom, our sense of space, but of course they also make possible, in another sense, relationship at all. In order to be able to come out and enjoy meeting with others, to take part in social gathering, whether that's shopping or coming indeed into church, the place of the coverings that we're now being expected to wear is itself making possible relationship for us when otherwise it would not be. And of course there may be some who are still shielding, who are now able to contemplate perhaps being able to venture out in consequence of this additional protection. Space and relationship both form aspects of our freedom. And God in Christ has set us free for relationship one with another. And when Peter experiences that freedom of the Spirit, that freedom to venture forth from the darkness of the dungeon, he has no other desire than simply to share the good news of his release, of coming into relationship once more with his friends. And we who've experienced the freedom of the Spirit that God gives us are likewise invited to share with one another.